So here's the thing to cap off all our fun we've been having the past 2 days. This is a British trade expert's response to what's been going on. Now, I'm presuming by this point other stuff has probably merged, so who knows? Maybe this video might be horribly out of date. Maybe Boris Johnson has come to his sense and I laugh when I say that. Maybe Boris Johnson's come to his sense and extended the negotiations. I highly doubt it. But this is a British trade expert's view on this. It's very clear. British trade experts slam UK government's unrealistic Brexit deal demands. UK trade experts claim that the UK is placing unrealistic demands on EU negotiators to cede ground in trade talks after reviewing the country's latest draft deal proposals. David Haig, the director for UK Trade Policy Project and former trade negotiator, said that the UK was cherry-picking what it liked about EU membership. What's that? Oh, sorry. It's my phone. Hello? Oh, 2016 calling? Oh my! What's that? The Brexiteers are saying that they can cherry pick from the parts of the EU membership and negotiating deal while not having to what's that? Having their cake and eat it, you say? Oh, I'm sure they'd never be doing that now in 2020. Yeah. One of the very first things, by the way, and during the referendum, the EU said, and have plainly said from the very beginning, is the UK cannot cherry pick what it likes of being an EU member while not taking part in the responsibilities as well. They have been universally clear from the very start. If you want certain things, then you have to take on certain responsibilities. That's pretty fair, to be honest. Anyway, it continues. The UK is looking for more than the Canada, Korea, or Japan in exchange for the same or probably even less in terms of level playing field provisions, he told the Financial Times. Sam Lowe, from the think tank of Centre of European Reform, said that certain demands, such as automatic recognition of British qualifications, went far beyond what the EU offered other trading partners like Japan and Canada. The British request to have British qualifications recognised by default, subject to terms and conditions, goes far beyond the EU-Japan deal or even the CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement deal with Canada, he said. This is not necessarily impossible, but it is not the kind of things that the EU hands out readily in free trade agreements. The warnings follow another round of failed Brexit talks, which ended last week. Ended last week. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, labelled the lack of progress as disappointing. To make progress in these negotiations, if it is still the UK's intention to strike a deal with the EU, the UK will have to be more realistic, he told reporters. If the UK will have to change its strategy. You cannot have the best of both worlds, he added. The UK government released a draft of the comprehensive trade deal consisting of 12 separate texts yesterday, after originally opposing the move. The publication comes as lead Brexit negotiator David Frost tried to ramp up pressure on Barnier to accept British demands in an angry letter sent on Tuesday. In it, he called the EU an unworthy partner who should think again about its demands on the UK. British exceptionalism, once again, raises its ugly head. What makes the EU apparently, quote, unworthy of being a trade partner? That's just so ridiculous. Like, you would not go to your boss to like negotiate for a pay rise and say that you are completely unworthy to have me employed here. I demand a pay rise. Your boss is not going to even entertain that. He's just going to tell you to leave his office. Oh, that is, it's just gobsmacking. It really is. It's absolutely unbelievable. And yet, bizarrely, you have not only Brexiteers, but the Brexit supporters cheering this on as if it's some sort of good thing. It's unbelievable. And yet, a lot of them are like pointing to like history where like the EU has done deals at like the 11th hour. It's not been done at the 11th hour. What has been continuously going on, which they always seem to fail to ignore, was that these negotiations happened over a length of time, and then finally they came to an agreement. What is happening here is that the UK has taken that fact that, oh, the EU does deals at the 11th hour, but has forgotten the fact that there has been a series of negotiations taking place before that. And the UK and the particular negotiators and the Brexiteers behind this seem to think that, oh, it's okay, we can just make ridiculous demands and the EU will cave into them at the 11th hour because that's what they've done before. No, it's not happened at all. Once again, Brexiteers living in Fantasyland. Anyway, it continues. He tried to downplay the EU warnings that the UK's size and proximity to Europe meant it should be treated differently, calling requests to have the UK subject to the European Court of Justice rulings as unprecedented. Yeah, this is just absolutely ridiculous. It really is. If we're gonna, quote, be trade partners with the EU and have this trade deal, then absolutely we should follow their rules. That means we might have to be being under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Rules and Regulations, which deal with these. Once again, you can't cherry pick obligations. You can't say, well, we want to be part of the single market, but we're not going to necessarily follow the same rules. So if some of that stuff ends up in the EU, it's not our fault. Once again, you cannot ignore these obligations. There are rules. There is a reason why the EU and the single market has been so successful. It's because it has been joined together by a spirit of compromise, the likes of which we have never seen. The EU will continue to be successful. Once again, go back in time and history, and you will see continuously, going back to, after the Second World War, where the beginnings of the EU were the European Coal and Steel Council. You have people saying, oh, it won't last more than 5 years. It's unbelievable, but there you go. All because these Brexiteers, these free market fundamentalists, just oppose regulations flat out. And it's not just regulations that maybe you're not allowed to put certain stuff into your product, but if you do, well, it means you can cut corners, or safety regulations, or workers' rights. There's a ton of stuff they just flat out should say the government should just not be allowed to do when it comes to the marketplace. And the thing is, there are conservatives who are capitalists, but they understand the reason why regulations should exist and why protections should be in place. And once again, this whole thing of the fracture between the Tory party of being in favour and not being in favour of Europe, primarily along the lines of the regulations, comes up again. Once again, who knows? Who knows where we could be soon? This time in a couple of months, maybe in December. Who knows? Literally, who knows? Once again, we are at a crystal ball staring, and we just don't know what's going to happen. But I'll tell you now, the EU ain't going to back down. The EU, from day one, has been very, very clear about its negotiation positions. You cannot, as they said, Michel Barnier said there, you cannot cherry pick what you want from EU membership. You are not going to be treated as special. And all the predictions of the Brexiteers just haven't come true. Constantly. Line them up. Find all of them. None of them have come true.